Day Shift is an example of stuff we did everything in camera, even the contortions. I just shot it in reverse.
I know, yeah, I saw that.
So, it doesn't speak to me to work on a big cartoon movie. And I've worked on a ton of movies where everything's animated and you spend 5 months in a blue screen stage. That's not what I want to do.
This episode is brought to you by the best-selling book, Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, How to Turn Your Independent Film into a Money-Making Business. Learn more at filmbizbook.com. I'd like to welcome to the show, JJ Perry. How you doing, JJ?
Good, my brother. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Now, there is sometimes I see in your credits, there's another name in between JJ and Perry, which is Loco. Is that true, sir? Look at, oh... For people who are listening, he just stood up and showed me his tattoo of Loco on his stomach. Listen, before we even get started, brother, I've worked with a ton of stunt people over the course of my career. I've yet to meet a stunt person who's not nuts in the best, most beautiful, loving way that word could be used. I've had this is the conversation with stunt people when I ever work with them on a set as a director. I need you to jump off that. That building over there. He goes, Can I go apply? Can I go 5 floors? No, I just third floor is fine. No, I could go 10 floors. I can do 10 floors. I could do 15 if you want me to. And do you want me to be on fire? I could be on fire. I need it for my reel. Can I be on fire too? Can I work it? So it's like no matter what I ask, they were like, no, that's not enough. I could drive the car off the roof on fire, flip 3 times.
Yeah. No, that's kind of the mentality, we're always trying to go bigger, faster, stronger. That's kind of the where the mindset is. Always trying to outdo what we did last time. It's like anything else. You want to one step beyond what you did last time. We're always trying to push the envelope.
No, absolutely. And every stunt person I ever worked with has been the utmost professional, and it seems like they're nuts, but they're so calculated and so specific about what they're doing, so everyone stays safe, and all that kind of stuff. Because the stuff that you guys do is insane, and it can't go wrong, and it's really amazing what you do. And man, all right, so let's take it back, brother. How and why did you get into this insanity that is the film business, man?
So I graduated from high school back in '86 out of Stafford, Texas. And I worked on 2 films that came through Houston. One was called Pray for Death. It was a Sho Kosugi film back when the ninja craze was out. And another one was called They Still Call Me Bruce. It was like an action comedy.
I remember that movie, dude. It was an amazing movie.
Johnny Yoon, exactly, the Korean guy, Korean actor. And so, I'd already sworn in to join the Army, so there was no getting out of that. And towards the end of my stint in the Army, I out-processed to Fort Ord, California. That's where I was going to out-process from. Mm-hmm. And when I was at Fort Ord, I was on the Army Taekwondo team at the time. I was going down. I was competing all over California and all over, the U.S. and et cetera. And I went down to L.A. a couple times to compete. And some of the guys I was competing against were stuntmen. And, because I'd been stationed in Korea for a year, I had a leg up on them. I was, competing on a very high level at that time. But one of the guys who's no longer with us, his name is Chris Carnell, was a dear friend of mine. He died in a motorcycle wreck a couple years ago. But we're the same size, same age. And I was like, where'd you get? He had nice shoes, nice car. And I was like, dude, what are you, a drug dealer? He goes, no, man, I'm a stuntman. And coming down from Fort Ord, I came down and trained a few times. About 2 weeks later, he said, hey, man, there's a big audition here for a movie called Lionheart. It was Van Damme's second movie.
Yeah.
So I took a 3-day pass, drove down, and booked the job. But the problem was when I went back to ask my first sergeant if I could, take 3 weeks off to do a movie, he was like, nah, you ain't doing no movie, boy. We got work to do. We got Army work to do, boy. So they called me Hollywood up until the time I out-processed. And then I told them, I said, I didn't know what I was going to do at that time. I figured I would go down to LA and give it a try. I didn't really know anyone except for Chris. And I figured, I'm going to give it a try. And so I just drove down the 5 south, never made the left turn on the 10 to go back to Texas. And thought I would probably fuck that up for sure and be back in the Army at no time because I knew they'd be saving a seat at the table for me. But it just worked out. And here we are 32 years later talking about my movie that I just directed, which I can't believe. So I never expected any of this, my brother. I fumbled my way through all of it. And I'm super grateful for every moment that I've had.
So what was your first big break as a stunt guy?
Well, So it broke down like this. I didn't really, the first week I landed in LA, I was answering phones at a Taekwondo school on Wilshire and La Jolla. It was called Junsheng Taekwondo. And there was a call they were looking for guys for the cross trainer Reebok commercial. The very first one for the Super Bowl at that time. Oh. And one of the guys he said, hey, I don't have my car. Can you give me a lift? One of the guys, it was like an actor type dude that had an agent and whatever. So I drove him over there, and it was in West Hollywood. I park, he goes in, it's taking a while. So I put 50 cents in the meter. I go upstairs, and the lady says, hey, did you put your name down so I wrote down my name and the number of the Taekwondo school. And then I wrote down my friend's name and his agent's name. And I went in because the commercial was about basic training. It was like called the Reebok Cross Trainer Pumps, but it was like they shave your head, and it was like an army thing. So I went in there, I was like, Perry JJ AK 5441109. They were like, holy shit, who's this guy? I just literally just got out of the army, and I booked that job. So that's how it started. And I didn't anticipate, like when the check started coming in the mailbox, I was like, you make $750 a month in the army. I almost started crying, and then
for everybody listening, you were in a Super Bowl commercial. What was it? We're talking about the early mid 80s.
No, I'm talking about like 1990 for the
1990. Right. So your 1990 Super Bowl commercials, the money and the residuals off
slot
that.
Slot machine.
It's insane. You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars in 1990.
Yep, that's true. And then I started doubling. I doubled Lorenzo Lamas a few times down on Renegade. We're down in San Diego. Then I doubled Russell Wong in a TV series called Vanishing Sun that I told you about, Jeff Cadiente earlier, a dear friend of ours. And kind of how it started. Stunt work is networking, and it's kind of like they're always looking for the man or woman that's not scared to go big and it's safe, and they're not looking for the crazies. They're looking for the calculated, smart, individuals who are ready to go big and have a strong physicality. And, having a background in Taekwondo and being in the military, like when I got out of the army, I didn't realize what I would be able to apply some of the skills I learned in the army was, except for being a cop. But then I quickly realized that, the hard work and the work ethic of being in the army, after the army, nothing else is really ever hard again. So I got that out of the way pretty quick in life. So it was really easy for me to get up at 5 a.m. and do my road work and go out and meet people and do my thing. So yeah, that's how it all happened for me, was those 2 TV shows got me going in that commercial. And here we are.
So there is, I think there is a stunt school now, but was there anything like a stunt school, or did you just learn on the job?
Learned on the job. And I'll never forget my first car hit. I had to do get hit by a car on Renegade. They wanted me to run into the middle of the street with a female stunt woman, and there's a briefcase in the middle of the street, and they want us to race to the briefcase, and then a Lincoln Continental hits us both. So I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to seem like like I don't know what I'm doing, but I also don't want to get killed or make a mistake and hurt my counterpart. So I asked the stunt coordinator, I said, well, what's the objective of this? He said, well, your objective is not to get underneath the car, bro. So get light on your feet, ride up the hood, get up into the windshield. And if he punches you through, just go all the way over. And if he doesn't, just get upside the car. And so what I did was I just got very aggressive, and the car actually hits you. But in my mind, I was thinking I'm going to hit the car. And next thing I know, it was light. It was dark. It was light. It was dark. It was light. It was dark. And boom, I was on the pavement. I was like, oh, that wasn't so bad. So there it was. It's my first car hit.
I gotta ask you, man. I've always wanted to ask a stunt guy this. What is it in the brain? There's something in your mind, in your brain, that allows you to go, hey, that wasn't so bad. You just said it. I think that's absolutely horrific, personally, because that's not in my DNA. So what is it? What is that thing that stunt people have that not only do they want to do it and enjoy doing it, but they want to continue to one up themselves and keep pushing themselves physically with the complexity of this stuff. And we haven't gotten into fight coordination yet, which we'll get into, but just in stunts, there's something in the DNA of stunt people that I've experienced. What is that? I'd love to hear your opinion on that, man.
So the generation before me, that when I came in, there were a lot of cowboys, and being from Texas, I'm kind of a cowboy too, but that background of riding rodeo or bull riding or bronc riding or bulldogging, you have to be able, can't be scared to get hit. So a lot of stunt performers come from, a rodeo background or an athletic background, like football players. So for me, I had 168 amateur fights when I got out of the Army. So like, I wasn't scared to get hit. And, being an athlete on that level, like being on the national team or competing on that level, you have to, there's that moment of truth that we all have, like that, where you can't lie in that moment. You have to be very real about what's going to happen, and you have to make peace with it. You have to be calm in that moment. And all those years of competition and being in the Army helped me settle into being in a very precarious position, and being at peace with it and making up my mind. Okay, I did one. You can't. It's not just like you're going to do one. You're going to do it one time. You're probably going to do it 3 or 4 times. Right. So it's also pain management. It's also your ability to strive under pain, like when you're getting hurt. Now, the difference between getting hurt and getting injured. Getting hurt means you get up and do it again. Getting injured means you're on a ride in an ambulance to the hospital to get sewn up or a broken bone. So I would say that most of the stunt performers, we all share the same likes. Like we all came from an athletic background, or X Games now, which I think are some of the most amazing people, parkour athletes now, UCLA level gymnasts, some of the best female stunt performers that I work with were elite gymnasts at some point, because, you think like my daughter's in gymnastics and she started when she was 4, but you have the little girls doing this where they're peeling their hands up and they're dealing with pain, and it's all about that 1 second that you have to hit the vault right. You have to gather all that. You have to make up your mind, I'm going for it. So that's kind of like being a stunt performer. You just have to be able to not lie in the moment of truth, to be present in the moment of truth and execute, So it's all about seeing yourself do it. So I feel like that's something that we all have in common. Like one of the big things for me is like being on the road with a bunch of like-minded folks, coming up with just killer ways to physically displace humans. That's my job, is coming up with clever ways to do it, but not injure them. But make it like, because now there's more movies and more content being made than any time in the history of cinema or film. And the expectations are way higher, way higher, like with video games and anime and all these other things that kids are watching now. Die Hard is a great example of a movie that I loved in the 80s. But if you put a 16-year-old kid to watch that now, they'll be on their phone looking at their Instagram in 20 minutes. It's just, it's not it's not going to capture their attention. You know what I mean? It's stuff that we've done already, it's an amazing film. And I've got to work with McTiernan before. He's an amazing director. But that's an example to me of where it came from and where it's going,
That's really interesting because, I was watching, because I'm a huge fan of Fall Guy, the original show back in the day. And my wife and I were watching it. This is like probably 5-6 years ago. We sat down and we watched the first season because we're like, oh man, remember Fall Guy? Let's go back and watch those. Man, those were freaking awesome. And you're watching it. And as you're watching what they did on a weekly basis, you're like, that was all real. Like these guys are insane. You don't see that kind of stunt work in television today. It was just, they were doing gags. Jumping off roofs, full blown. It was insane what they were doing. And you're going back, and that was all in camera. Where now I think, and you've started at a point where it was all still in camera. And now you've got digital stunt performers doing some really, insane stuff. But I do think that as the audience, we can tell when, Fast and the Furious is fun, but, and the Marvel movies are fun, and the stunt performers that do stuff there is great. But when you watch something like John Wick, you feel it a lot more. And you worked on John Wick, obviously, but you feel that this is not a CG situation.
Listen, around 2003 or 4, everybody started saying, "Oh, we'll fix it in post." For me, and I'll tell you something about Fast and Furious, because I've done 2. I did 8 and 9. A second year directed 8 and 9. And I'll tell you something. We did wreck 340 cars, and we do go 1,000 miles an hour when we're doing those movies. So there is the only way to fake fast is to go really fast. It's Fast and Furious, not Slow and Curious. But at the end of the day, for me, it's like, Day Shift is an example of stuff we did everything in camera, even the contortions. I just shot it in reverse.
I know, yeah. So, I saw that.
So it doesn't speak to me to work on a big cartoon movie. And I've worked on a ton of movies where everything's animated and you spend 5 months in a blue screen stage. that's not what I want to do. I don't usually look for those jobs. I'm looking for the jobs where I can lock up Edinburgh, Scotland, like on Fast and Furious 8, and do a massive car chase and a chase flying over cities on wires and fighting and breaking through buildings, or John Wick, or any of these movies. Like, I'll give you an example. Gemini Man is another example of an amalgamation of both. We went to Cartagena, Colombia, and did this massive motorcycle chase that we did all practically, but they augmented Will Smith's face onto the motorcycle rider. So there's an element of both that I think works okay, that I like. Sure. But when it's a complete digital takeover, and pretty soon, I think action directing is going to be a lost art soon. There's not a lot of it's infinitely harder to block a big car chase up when we got 19 cars and 4 motorcycles and helicopters and explosions. That's not easy to do. It's actually a lot harder to do than most people think. That's where second unit comes in, and all the experience that I gained from being a second unit director, making me efficient and fast. And it's like pool. I'm not thinking about my shot. I'm thinking about my next 5 shots and my leaves to get to every shot. That's filmmaking. And I'm running 9 cameras sometimes. So it's that 9 camera spread, redirect the next street, the 9 cameras, and push, pull, track, counter, and then mount, and then go to the next street. So, that's something that I think will be a lost art soon, because they'll be animating those cars at some point, which breaks my heart, but I'll be long gone by then, my brother. I'll be long gone.
Exactly. No, when I said like Fast and Furious, I remember like when they, jumping a car from a building to a building. I'm assuming you didn't do that live.
No.
But things like that. But yeah, there is in those shows specifically, there's a ton of cars that they use, and you could tell that there's cars. And that's one of the things that made the original so amazing. It was all real in camera. And that's the thing. You're right. There is a lost art. I want to ask you, I think it's confusing to a lot of people listening, especially young filmmakers. What is the hierarchy in the stunt department? So you start off with the stunt performer. What is the hierarchy as far as the department heads and things?
I can tell you the way it went for me. I started as a utility stuntman. Then I became a stunt double. And because of my background in martial arts and being in the Army, I started choreographing the fights that I was in. And then that led me to becoming a fight choreographer. And then I became a stunt coordinator. And then I became a second unit director. And, there's a lot of ways to climb the ladder, but I feel like that's the long route, but that's the most important route to take, because if you miss one of the rungs, you want to hit every rung. You want to learn every facet of the game, right. Driving, motorcycles, water, fighting, falling, fire, horseback. Every facet, the more facets that are on the diamond, the shinier that diamond is, and the more money you can eventually make in your profession. So I wanted to educate myself on every facet of that. And that's how it went for me. It's a bit different now, because now there's infinitely more jobs than there were when I started. And now you can come in as a specialist. I'm a fight guy. Oh, I'm a parkour guy. Oh, I'm a gymnast. And that's the way they come in, and that's the way they go. So, but I'm not knocking them. There's some amazing talent out there now with, I think once YouTube hit and editing software became a consumer product, editing software made a lot of us action directors, because once you know how to edit, it informs what you need to shoot. And, growing up on watching those mid-'80s Jackie Chan films where he really changed the game of fighting. And he's an idol of mine, because he's a stuntman that became a star and then became an action director. So, right. That's, like he was a Charlie Chaplin in a, what's his name?
Buster Keaton.
Buster Keaton. Chan is a huge fan. We all are. But that's kind of where his inspiration came from. And my generation, like I came up with Chad Stahelski and Dave Leach and a lot of the guys over at 8711. I'm a member of that crew, and I'm also a member of Stunts Unlimited, who are those original guys that did the Fall Guys. Stunts Unlimited is. They've been around since 1973. But that's that's kind of how it was. And watching Chan's trajectory is kind of the way, like, because he changed. What we did is we took his movies and we would shoot his action sequences with cameras and then cut them even on VHS deck to deck until Final Cut became a consumer product. We all chipped in, and then we all learned how to edit. And then we became action directors, budding action directors.
Now, with all the insane, gags that you guys have done over the years, has there ever been a stunt that you just said, nah, man, I got to walk away from this one. This is just too too risky?
The biggest stunt I ever did was getting married to a lawyer, and I'm still married. So no, I look, at the end of the day, I'm just okay in the water. You know, I'm not. I've done so did you see the movie The Rundown?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the Rock.
So I was doubling Sean William Scott when we went down the mountain and over the falls and all that shit. Me and Paulie Leopoulos and Tonawai Reed and Marcos Zaror, there was 2 sets of doubles for each because we were getting so busted up. And there was a scene where we had to go into a lagoon and swim towards a waterfall. And I had boots on and jeans on. And Tonawai Reed is Hawaii. He's from Hawaii. He's big. He's like a shark when he gets in the water. He's massive. And he's like, he's got gills. He can swim like a fish. And his wife was doubling the girl in there. And she's another one, grew up in Hawaii. He's like, after take 3 or 4, I started getting really tired. And I was like, hey, man, I probably need to tap out. So I would say like doing a lot of water work for me is not my forte. I'm like a brick. I'm like a brick from Texas. You put me in the water and I might go right to the bottom, bro.
Fair enough. Now you also got involved in one of my favorite films of the 90s, Mortal Kombat, man.
Yep.
Dude, how did you get involved with that? And then you eventually played some of the parts of like Sub-Zero and those kind of things. I mean, again, those at the time, I remember at the time, man, I mean, you couldn't go anywhere without listening to that damn song in the radio. First of all, what was it? I mean, how did you get involved with that project, man? And how did you guys make it look so cool back then, man?
So I used to have 2 Taekwondo schools in LA while I was a stuntman. I had one in Inglewood. It's called Taekwondo West. One in Inglewood and one in Sherman Oaks. And the one in Sherman Oaks, I had a friend named Dana He who was already working on the movie. She was an Olympic gold medalist from Taekwondo. We're friends from my sport from Taekwondo. We were teammate, like friend, competitors together and dear friends. She was dating Larry Kazanoff, the producer of Mortal Kombat at the time. They were looking for a stunt double for Johnny Cage for the additional photography of Mortal Kombat 1. She brings Larry into my school in the middle of one of my classes, and I can see him staring at me. And I'm like, Dana, who's the dude staring? That's Larry Kazanoff, the producer of Mortal Kombat. And, class is over. I meet him. I'm like, nice to meet you, sir. And he said, hey, can you show me some kicks? And I bust out a 540 and I bust out a bunch of, oh, man, that's awesome. Can you turn around for me? And I was like, what's that mean? He's looking at the back of my head. So if I could double the actor who's playing Johnny Cage. And he was like, this is perfect. 2 days later, I get a call from Robin Shue, who was the star of the movie and also one of the fight coordinators. And Jeff Imada was the stunt coordinator. I get a call, hey, why don't you come down and double Johnny Cage for the additional fight with Scorpion on the bamboo bridge thing. It was a big additional scene. So I got to do that. And as soon as that was as soon as it was a big hit, they greenlit 2. Then I played Scorpion and Cyrax in 2 and did some doubling for doubling for Raiden, a little doubling for Smoke, a little doubling for all the characters, but played 2 of the characters. And then when the TV series came out, Larry called me and says, hey, will you come down and double Kung Lao? So I doubled Kung Lao for the first few episodes. And then they said, can you play Scorpion? Can you play Sub-Zero? And I was like, yeah, dude, I'll do whatever. I'm happy. Like I was always concerned about my acting, but when you have that thing on your face, it's like
it's just eyes. Yeah.
Sub-Zero. So I was Sub-Zero. Now I'm Chub-Zero. And that's how it goes. But that was like my Mortal Kombat experience, like I was super, super stoked. Now that a lot of the youngsters that work for me now, they'll pull it up on YouTube and I'm a little embarrassed about my bad acting and whatever, like being in a loincloth.
Hey, man. Hey, it's the 90s, bro. What are you going to do?
Pays bills, dog. What are you going to do?
It pays the bills. It paid the bills. No question. Now, as you became a second unit director, which I still think second unit directors are some of the most technically sound directors out there. If you can direct action, you can direct cinema because it's a visual medium. I think Quentin's the one who said it. He's like, my favorite directors are action directors like Tony Scott and those kind of guys who just are so technical and visual. What are mistakes that directors make when setting up an action sequence that you've seen? So, what we've done, like 8711 is the team I've been on. Before that, it was called Smash Cuts. And it was kind of the crew of us that came up in the 90s together, like Stahelski, Leach, Marcus Young, Mike Gunter, Danny Hernandez. There was a bunch of Brad Martin, Garrett Warren. These are all guys that are prominent second unit directors now that are running all the fight stuff. In the last 30 years, what we did once that Final Cut came out, we start shooting stunt viz, which is we shoot and cut the sequence
before we go to the set. We make a room full of boxes that measures out from the production designer, and then we shoot and cut it shot for shot, where we make the action the star. We want to tell our certain story points after having a discussion with the director and a discussion with the DP about his style, and we give them a broad outline of what it would look like based on their version. And usually we get it right within 3 versions, like we tied it up within 3 versions. I've been paired up in the past few years with a lot of first and second time directors. I get paired up with them often to help. When it comes to the action, it can be quite daunting, if you're not used to doing it. And you're right. Locking up Scotland with a bunch of cars and doing wire work over a city and using 9 cameras is infinitely harder now that I've done both than directing a scene with 3 people in a room talking, unless you don't have 3 good actors.
Well,
if you have bad actors, maybe it's way harder. But my point being, the technical execution of that, the application of filmmaking is extremely difficult, especially when you're going 70 miles an hour and you're going to go through 7 streets with explosions and whatever, and you have a finite amount of time to do it, because second unit is never as elaborate or as funded as first unit is. It has to be a streamlined event that moves like a rocket. So I think one of the mistakes that a lot of first and second time directors make is not having a clear vision of what they want. Mm-hmm. And sometimes my job is to help them discover their vision, whether he or she knows what it is or not. So it's I always take it upon myself, it's my job, if they don't know, to show them and to give them options. That's my job as a stunt coordinator, as a fight coordinator, and a second unit director, is to help the director achieve their vision of the action, which is harder than achieving your vision of the action. When I know what I want, I always know what I want. So as a director, I came in with a really solid plan for my movie. I've had the set, my production designer, Greg Berry, we already knew what the sets were going to be and where to put the neoprene and which walls needed to fly because the camera's going to do this. I already knew. So it's in the neighborhood that I've been roaming around for 32 years. And if you're new to the neighborhood, it's easy to get lost. And I think one of the things that some directors are a little intimidated by is they want to go out and wander around and find it for themselves. And that's cool, but we're not in film school. We're in film work when we're making a movie. So you do have a finite amount of time, and you have to be decisive, because every decision you make as a director has a ripple effect from all of the departments that it has to go to. Production designer, okay, you're fighting, go to tear this. Costume needs to go. You punch him here. Makeup needs this. You're going to break his arm. Props and prosthetic arm needs to go. And so you have to be decisive and give your team a chance to react to your decisions, so it's not last minute. And this is one of the mistakes that I think a lot of first and time directors make, is they don't want to decide. They will not make decisions in time.
Now, when you were involved with John Wick, I mean, that must have been a dream. That project must be because it was just such a old school approach to fights. And it's not like being cut 50,000 angles. It's like you see Keanu beating up 3 guys, 1 shot. And it's not like the famous one is like, I don't know if you know who shot Taken 3 or 2 or whatever, but you see, I saw this one sequence somebody brought on YouTube. It was so beautiful. It's like, it's Liam running and jumping across a fence as he's chasing somebody. It was 75 cuts. It was like no joke. It was like tick, 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 tick. As opposed to something like John Wick, you just look at it and you're like, that's just that. So what was it like, dude, just getting the call and going on that gig, brother?
So I was on Expendables 3 in Bulgaria with Jason Statham and Sylvester Stallone on a container in Sofia, shooting machine guns when Chad Stahelski called me. We're teammates, and mad respect to Chad and Dave for all that they've accomplished. That style of mixing judo with jujitsu in gun work. He calls me, and I was about to finish up in Expendables 3. He said, "Hey, listen, I'm doing this shootout in a nightclub in New York on my movie John Wick. I need your help," because I was in the Army, so I know how to work the gun work. And look, we were all big fans of Hard Boiled, the John Woo movie. But I want to get my hands on those Chinese guns that have 500 bullets in them. He never reloads. I love those guns. I want to get one of those. But that's one of the things that one of the mantras was that we would be true to that. If you're running a Glock 17 with a regular magazine, you have 15 in one. You have an extended mag, you get 17 in one or 18 in one. So that was it. I got the call to come down. They were shooting the final scene out on the dock when he's fighting the father of the guy at the end. He gives me an address of a nightclub and says, we want to shoot. We want to start shooting. We're going to shoot this nightclub scene at this place. Can you go there? I got there on a Friday afternoon. They're shooting at night. So I just drove to that address, gave the door guy $100 to let me in. And walk through there. He said, it'll start at the top. When you go up the stairs, the room to your right, it'll start there. There's a door. It'll walk in. You'll go through. We'll work our way all the way around the top floor. And then the beginning of it, we'll pull him through the dance floor. So I just walked with my iPhone doing a first-person shooter at patrons of the club. Then I would turn the phone around to myself, do a reload. And then, so what John Wick is, it's exactly the opposite. It's reverse first-person shooter. It's always on Keanu pulling him and then wrapping and until it falls apart, and then we do it all over again. So it's a big pull into a wrap, and that's technically the idea, the theory of shooting. So you see, Keanu Reeves is doing this. So for me, once I got there and we started working that out, I knew right away, looking in the monitors with Chad and Dave, I was like, dude, we're on one. You guys are on one right now. I said, it's cutting edge because, this is the thing. Now that I've done a John Wick, I've done two. I did just the club scene shootout in the first one, and then I did all of the second one. And we upped Keanu's training camp for the second one because what Chad said to me, he said, how can we make two better than one? I said, well, you have to make Keanu better. So we put him in a really hard jiu-jitsu camp, judo camp, took him to a 3-gun range and had him trained by a 14-time world 3-gun champion named Gerard Butler up here in Simi Valley. We just made him better. And then let the camera run longer. So, it was one of the highlights of my career because I'm a dear friend and fan of Keanu Reeves. I'm a huge fan of Chad Stahelski because we go back 32 years. One of the first people I met when I got out of the Army. He's been a huge ally, I didn't really have a plan when I got out of the Army. I just didn't want to fuck things up and have to end up back in the Army. But, Chad, went to USC. He was always, he always knew that he always knew he was going to be a director. And I really admire that. I kind of watched where he walked in the snow and followed his footsteps. So, he was actually a producer on Day Shift. He was the one that I took it to that got me greenlit. So that was one of the big, helping him out and working with our team at 8711 it's always a pleasure. There was a lot of hitters on that movie, bro, on the first and second one.
So it's so funny because I remember Dave, I met Dave in Sundance in 2005 when he was promoting as a Sledge.
Yep.
You remember that movie?
Yep. Yeah, I worked on it. We all worked.
Did you work? You worked on Sledge? So he was doing like a stunt thing, and I met him and we hung out for a while. And this is before, this is a few years before he did John Wick. But as I was watching his career grow, I'm like, man, God bless, man. I'm so glad he's done good for himself over the years, man. It's awesome. Now,
Alex, listen, if you look at stunt performers' trajectory, like I've worked on 150 features and over 300 episodes of TV.
Jesus.
When you're working with Ang Lee, Jet Li, Spike Lee, when you work with everyone, you have to learn something if you're paying attention. That's I guess the difference between a stunt guy and a stunt man. A stunt guy is just trying to make a bunch of money and get some toys. A stunt man is out there trying to make the movie better, and he's paying attention to every shot and trying to make every shot better. So, being a stunt man, and learning from some of the masters and learning just as much from first and second time directors on what not to do sometimes.
Right.
Was part of my film school. And, Dave and Chad are so the first one is the guy who directed from my group that directed Smoking the Bandit.
Oh, God.
Hal Needham.
Yeah.
So he busted out in the 70s. He's one of the founders of my group, Stunts Unlimited, So he's one of the guys that busted out. And you have a few stunt directors from the U.S. that have done some movies. Like Jackie Chan, for me, is one of the all-time greats because he took it completely to the next level and he did stuff that we're still doing now. But Chad and Dave, for me, were instrumental in opening the door, and hopefully that door gets torn off the hinges, because in the mid 2000s, in the early 2000s, there was this wave of visual effects directors that were directing movies. And the difference between us and them, not to knock them, is they don't have a human experience. When you're making a visual effect previs, you're on a computer, and the computer will do exactly what you tell it to do.
Right.
Now, fast forward to me training Keanu, or us training Tom Hardy in Warrior, or Joel Edgerton in Warrior, or Charlize Theron on Atomic Blonde. We're training them. We're grabbing, do this. We're directing them. We're making them badasses. The best way to fake being a badass is just to make them a badass. We are directing them, and we have their trust. So when we're on set and someone says, well, I don't want to stand over here, I want to stand over there, I'm like, I can adjust quickly. But that visual effects director was like, well, wait a minute. No, they don't know how the computer does exactly what they tell them to do. When they get the human effect, when the human effect comes in, it became very difficult for them. And also it's interfacing. As a stunt coordinator, you're constantly interfacing with all the other departments. So you have this dialogue and this repertoire with everyone on the movie, in production meetings, going to their offices. So I know how to communicate with everyone. I have a relationship with pretty much every crew, anywhere, because I've filmed in 36 countries. So it's a huge advantage for us as action directors becoming directors, because we have this not film school experience, but filmmaking experience, which is entirely different than theory. It's execution. It's like fighting. The guy that hits the bag all day, you don't know what he's going to do when he gets punched in the face. But the guy that spars all day, he's reactive and proactive and hyperactive. So that's my take on action directing. That's my take on it.
Well, it's kind of like Mike Tyson says, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
Amen, my brother. Amen. Amen.
You can be as badass as you want, but until you get that first punch in the face, all that shit goes out the window really quickly.
That's right.
So, man, I got a chance to watch your new film, Day Shift, brother. First of all, congratulations. When I saw it, I was just like, I was expecting great action. I got great action. And then as I was seeing some of the techniques in the movie, I was watching it, and I'm like, oh, this is all old school style, in-camera stuff. I'm like, yes. And then when I saw the contortionist vampires, I was like, oh, yes, he did, because then you can't BS that. It's so, you could do visual effects to do that, but man, when you get a contortionist out there doing crazy stuff, it just brings such reality. So tell everybody what the movie's about, and then we'll get into how you made it.
So the movie's about a man that got out of the Army, a lot like me, that's trying to keep his family together. And LA is a tough place to live, brother. Like when I got out of the Army, I was not prepared for rent and insurance and et cetera, et cetera. So he's a guy that has a job cleaning pools. And he augments his income by killing vampires and selling their teeth in an underground market of vampire hunters that extract vampire teeth and kill them. And what really attracted me to this, I'd been reading a lot of scripts, and I was super stoked just being a stunt coordinator and second-year director, making a ton of dough, flying all over the world, smashing people with all my friends, and then getting on a plane and going somewhere else and doing it all over again. It was a big risk for me to step out and direct a film. So I was going to be very picky, and I read a bunch of scripts. Oh, JJ, you were in the Army. You should do a movie about PTSD snipers. I was like, no, man, the world's dark right now. Right now with COVID and a double feature of monkeypox and a triple feature of war in Ukraine, the world's dark, dude. You can turn on the news right now and find 1,000 reasons to want to turn it off. Right. When I read the script Day Shift, it spoke to me immediately, because Big Trouble in Little China, Lost Boys, Evil Dead, Fright Night from the 80s, action comedy horror. I don't have a message. I'm not trying to tell anyone to do anything or change anyone's mind. I just want them to enjoy, and having those three elements, action, comedy, and horror, I always will have the upper hand on the audience. I can wow them with action. I can make them laugh with comedy, and I can make them jump with horror. So using those three tiers, those three elements of it, those three layers of attack, it was like triangulating my crossfire on the audience to keep them right where I wanted them. The script spoke to me because there's an underground world of vampires and an underground world of hunters that chase them, which is just like John Wick, but different. Right. So that's what they were coming. I got a lot of John Wick-ish scripts. And I was like, I already did that, man. And I don't want to bite on what Chad and Keanu are doing. And people will always say, oh, it's John Wick, But the movie I made is not John Wick with vampires. It's definitely not. I definitely wanted to to get as far away from that as I could because I'd already worked on that. And I want to give the bow to my bros at 8711, Chad and Dave. They did a great job with that. I don't want to bite on that. There's enough people doing it right now.
God.
I got that script. I got it from Sean and Yvette Yates from Impossible Dream. They brought it to me. They've been big, advocates. And then the guy, Tyler Tice, who wrote it, a gem, me and him worked on it for about a year. We just put big action teeth on it, big teeth. And then I made it, the characters as familiar to me as possible. Like Big John's character was like my platoon sergeant in the Army. Bud's wife is like my wife. My wife's an attorney. She's the Mike Tyson of arguers. And Bud has a 9-year-old daughter. I have a 9-year-old daughter. So I try to make it relatable to me. So when the thespians would ask me, I would be able to speak intelligently. And I'll be honest, the thing that really worried me more than anything was the comedy.
Yeah, because that's something. Yeah.
Bubba, I think I'm funny, but I don't know if anyone else fucking thinks I'm funny. So at the end of the day,
hiring Jamie Foxx is not a
Bubba, getting Day Shift was a win. Getting Jamie Foxx was winning the lottery.
Oh, he's so talented. Oh my God.
What a G, bro. And him and Dave Franco together.
Oh, great chemistry. Great chemistry.
I worked on a movie called Spy several years ago that Paul Feig directed.
Yeah.
I did the action for him and I did some second unit for him. And I watched, I was hoping this would happen from right when Chad and Dave finished John Wick. I started going to, read. I'd ask directors when I'd get hired, I'd be like, hey, can I sit through read-throughs? I wanted to be more a part of that, to watch the decisions being made. I really paid attention to Paul on how he directed the action. And he had these things, Post-it notes. Mm-hmm. And he would have, it was almost like an accordion of Post-it notes with alts that he had scribbled down. So when he would just let the camera roll and say, all right, try this. All right, try this. And then he would say, okay, now run with it. So having Jamie and Dave Franco in the comedy, bro, I just let the cameras roll and let them just have at it. So, I think, Jamie for me was the biggest win of all. Getting the movie is huge. Thank you, Netflix. Thank you, Chad Stahelski, for being greenlit. Thank you, Impossible Dream, for bringing it to me. Thank you, Tyler, for writing it. And Jamie Foxx, I will forever owe a debt of gratitude and always be a good bro to him, because that was him showing up to do my movie was such a massive thing for me. Now,
with a lot of second unit directors don't get the shot. A lot of them stay as second unit directors for their career. And like you said, I can have fun. I can go out. I'm working on big budgets. I'm having this fun. So when I saw that you were, when I went and started doing research on you, I was like, oh, this is his first shot. Like this is not a normal scenario, because a lot of times second unit directors know action, but they have no idea how to deal with actors. Like on a like a dialogue state, or how to carry character arcs and things like that. It's a little tougher to do that. So, but when I saw what you did, I was like, man, I'm interested to see how he does. And I was like, man, he held it together, man. Like the whole story was well put together. There's some beautiful Easter eggs for someone of my vintage to grab onto some Lost Boy lines. Won't give it away. When I saw that line, I was like, nice. So some nice little Easter eggs along the way. But it was just well done. It was really well done. And I was telling you earlier before we got started, man, the color of it looks great. The you could feel how hot it is. You could feel like the valley. And then since I'm from the valley, I was like, yep. Oh, they're deep in the valley over there. That's not Burbank. Nope, that's over. So it was fun. It's always fun for me when they shoot something in LA to like, yep, been there. Yep, I know where that is. Yep.
So, brother, listen, when I got out of the Army, it kind of was like that. I moved to the Valley first. I lived in the back of a Taekwondo school for a while. Then when I made my first bit of money, I moved to the Valley. And that's the trajectory, I think. You either move to the Valley, you have to move down by the airport when you first get here if you don't have any money. Then you make your way over the hill, which will be Night Shift Part 2. We'll be in Hollywood, or, we'll be in Hollywood maybe next time. But that was the trajectory. And one of the things that I remember about the Valley when I first got there was being from Texas, it's hot and humid, but the colors in the Valley, that orangey. And listen, total disclosure, I am completely colorblind, the worst colorblind you can be. But that orange for me really resonates. In the opening of Die Hard, when the plane lands, the orange sun that's setting when the plane lands, That's what I showed Toby Oliver when I said, I need your help with this, because I want the interiors to feel cold, like vampires would be there. You can almost feel their breath. But when you're outside, it should be hot and sticky, and like the valley, where you hear the of the watering things, of the you hear the of the cicadas, all of that I wanted to bring that to the movie. So yeah, that was part of it for me. And Toby Oliver is a gem. We shot the movie in 42 days with no second unit, which is a very short shoot for a movie of that size. And we didn't have a lot of time. We shot 31 days in Atlanta and 11 days in LA. So I was scared, all my interiors in Atlanta and a few exteriors. So what I did in LA, all of my establishing shots of LA, I would do these big drone handoffs, big drone shots showing the valley. Then we'd have the operator catch the drone, we hit a button, the drone would fly off. And then we follow our actors into wherever they were going. Yeah. So I really hosed the valley because I wanted to. And I think the valley is hot, sweaty, sexy, cool, exotic, trippy. You can smell the different flavors of food in the air. You can hear 7 different languages being spoken. It was this mystical place when I moved there, being from South Texas, like, whoa, the valley, like what a trip. So that was part of it for me, is to show how exotic the valley was. So there you go.
So, as a director, and I'm sure you've had this happen on other projects as well, there's always that one day that the whole world's come crashing down around you. You're like, oh my God, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make the day. We're not going to make the shot. Something's going to happen. And it's generally every day. We have every day there's a moment of that. But generally on this project, was there one day that stands out that you're just like, I feel like security is going to come and take me away?
No. But there's a moment, I'll tell you, it's funny. So I was never afraid of the action at all, ever. And my first AD, his name is Bill Clark. I call him Wild Bill. He's Quentin Tarantino's first AD. He's a dear friend. The scene where the vampires come to get Bud and his wife, it's the very end of the movie when they leave Seth and they take his wife and daughter. Bill comes to me the night before when we were wrapping up. He goes, you got 7.5 pages of dialogue tomorrow. And I was like, yeah, well, so? And I didn't know what that meant. I was like,
cool.
A
lot of dialogue.
And he goes, hey, Bubba, you got 7.5 pages of dialogue tomorrow. And I was like, cool, great. He goes, he just kind of pulled me, he's like, hey, so let's talk about this. So it didn't really dawn on me till about 4:00 in the afternoon when I was, oh shit, I better pay better attention to that. But at the end of the day, we ended up getting that right. We had it's because the cast was so great and no one went back to their trailers. Everybody hung out on set. We were playing music between setups. Everybody was having a good time. I wanted to keep the set light, like I keep my second unit light. It's either Metallica or Stevie Ray Vaughan between setups, or, dealer's choice. We get a new DJ, and we had Jamie with his boombox, and we had, the taco truck here and there and the coffee truck. So it ended up working out all right. And it was my ignorance that saved me, because I wasn't afraid. You're not afraid of what you don't know until you know it, right?
Of course.
And then it kind of worked out. And Bill at the end of that day went, whoa. He said, that was almost like having a baby. And I was like, well, I can't speak on that yet, but I can tell you now I know what 7.5 pages means. So
7.5 pages is a lot of dialogue, man. I mean, unless you're doing master shot theater, then it's cool. You can knock that out in 30 minutes. But if you're doing a normal setup, man, that's a lot of dialogue.
There were 9 people in the room too, so there's a lot of coverage. It was a lot of coverage, and also we had to be careful not to shoot the mirror, because the vampires are invisible in the mirrors, and I didn't have a huge visual effects budget on the movie, so I had to be very conscious of everything I was doing.
Right. No, exactly. And how many cameras did you shoot with, generally?
When we were doing all the dialogue, always 3 cameras. I always run 3 cameras. And then when we were doing the car chase, I was running 7 cameras, because it wasn't, like I said, we didn't have a lot of time, and it wasn't a Fast and Furious budget or a Gray Man budget, but it wasn't a little budget either. They were very generous with me. So because of second unit, I know how to budget my time really, really well when it comes to action. I just know this is going to work. This is going to work. I got to do this. Okay, this. I can make a change here. We can not cut here and go here. I know how to run the table. I know how to shoot that. I knew how to clean the table, how to run that 8-ball. But
so what was the biggest challenge you had on this project? Since it's your first full feature, you've done tons of second. What was the biggest challenge?
The hardest part for me was getting the opportunity to do it, bro. To be honest.
How'd you do that, by the way?
Well, like when Sean and Yvette brought it to me, and then we worked on it for a year. I was doing Fast and Furious 8 in London. Chad was in London with Keanu promoting John Wick 3. Now, I had shot the first sequence with the old lady as a stunt viz, and I had done a vampire genogram, different species, and I had done 2 sizzle reels and a lookbook. So we're out partying at the Gaucho Room with Keanu and Chad, celebrating the release of their movie, John Wick 3, went and hanging out with them. And about 4 a.m, Chad leans over and he goes, "Hey, man, I'm probably going to get some sort of first look deal. Do you have anything?" And I was like, "Yeah, funny you should mention that." I slid it. I didn't slide it across the table, but I emailed it to him. And I knew he was flying back to LA the next day. And at 6 a.m., when he was in the car on the way to Heathrow, I texted him. I said, "Hey, give that thing a look while you're on the plane." He landed in LA, and by the time he landed, he calls me. He says, "We're going to make this movie." And literally, 2 weeks later, we're in meetings to make this movie, and it was happening. So COVID hit, which put it on a hold. So the trajectory was Sean Reddick and Yvette Yates from Possibly give me the script, get behind me. Tyler Tice and I work on it for about a year together. Chad Stahelski sees it, gets excited about it, walks it into Netflix. Ori Marmer, Taylor Z, get excited about it, about the package of Chad and this movie and myself. Jamie Foxx comes aboard, and it turns into like a holy shit, it's going to be massive. And here we are. It's all in the past now. It's all behind us. So that's kind of the way it happened. And it happened really fast. We shot it really fast. I had one of the best times I've ever had prepping and shooting the movie. The only place that I was not aware of was post-production, because 32 years of prepping movies and shooting movies, I've been in the editing room a couple times with directors cutting together, because when I shoot second unit, I cut while I'm shooting and I deliver it. So I shoot a stunt viz for proof of concept. Then when I'm shooting what I shoot and cut the footage off of the DIT and hand it to them and say, proof of execution. You don't have to cut it this way. You cut it any way you want to. But this was my version of your vision, and now it's locked, and now it's done. If you want to give it to your editors as a roadmap, do whatever you like, but here it is. So all that being said, prepping the movie and shooting it was such a piece of cake. Going into post-production, I had already cut all of the action while we were shooting it. So theoretically, a third of the movie was cut already when we get to post. So watching the whole process of post, I learned so much in post about what I don't need to do. And I'll tell you, all those shots of the techno crane pushing over the pool that follows the feet up and takes blood, closes the door, and a lens flare hits from the sun, that 45-second shot, my cinematic, my Kurosawa shots, all gone, dog. All freaking gone.
Yep.
So learned so much about what I don't need to do that I would tell you confidently, as a 54-year-old budding filmmaker, that my sophomore effort will be infinitely better than my freshman effort.
Wow, that's so true, man. It's so true, because so it's so funny to say that, man, because you've been in the biz, man, for decades at this point. You've shot so much, you've worked at the highest levels, and yet you fell into the same trap that first-time directors fall into. We're like, let's make this one shot here, and then we'll do the Goodfellas shot through the kitchen and all that stuff. And remember Kurosawa, that Kubrick thing. We'll do that thing, and you fall into that, and you realize when you get in the cutting room, it just stops the entire movie. You can't do that.
It went like this. So the action was cut. We watched the movie for the first time, probably 2.5 or 3 weeks in. We just put all the reels together, and the movie came in at 2 hours and 43 minutes. So I looked at it and I was like, oh, wow. All right, cool. So I never wanted anyone. I was very conscious of this because I'm always watching. I made this movie for our generation, Gen X, but I also made it for the millennials and the Gen Y and Gen Z. Hence the Bud and Seth counterparts, that right. difference. And I'll get into that in a minute. Remind me to tell you about why that was inspired from. But it was easy for me because I didn't want my movie to feel long. I wanted it to be easy to watch because, listen, I'm not going to call any movies out, but there's a lot of movies now that I watch that are hard. That, I love them, but they become like I'm sitting. Now I'm aware that I'm watching.
They're fat.
I was making day shift for the small screen, for being 7 or 10 feet away from your big screen TV, from your sofa. You're sitting 4 feet high looking at your screen. That's in my mind, that was the movie I was making. I was not shooting it for a theater because it was, Netflix's small screen, but it's big screen ambitions on the small screen. So in saying that, it was very easy for me once I cut that first part of my finger off. I let that long shot go. It became easy for me to see. It is just at 54, in all those years of experience comes in wisdom. Like, I know I have to sift some of this out. So I let it go quickly. Listen, I'll be honest with you. It's not Shakespeare. And if it was Shakespeare, they wouldn't be hiring me, bro. They wouldn't hire a caveman like me. It has to be fast and fun, and something has to happen. And I don't want anyone to feel like, okay, I'm waiting now. What's going on? I don't want them looking at their Instagram. So that was kind of the full filmmaking experience that I wanted to create, is something that was scary, actiony, funny, and easy to watch.
And it's exactly it. Like, that's not a movie that can be 2 hours and 45 minutes. Like that story is not that story.
Oh,
so
brother.
It's just not, but it needs to be fast and tight and quick and you fun. And that's the kind of thing, you're not making Braveheart, which you need 3 hours to tell that story. And it's okay to do that. And honestly, I don't know if Braveheart gets made today. And that's
I used to double Mel Gibson, strangely. And I'm a huge fan. I think he's one of the best filmmakers alive. Listen, I used to be a stunt double, and I'm a huge fan, bro.
Apocalypto. Oh, God, it's a brilliant film.
The 250 millimeter lens on my set is called a Mel Gibson, because he always has a camera on a 250. And he told me, he goes, hey, kid, you want to see what's going on in there? Put the 250 in and reach in there and get them. And you can see what they're thinking, bro. So I always use that 250 for that. Get the Mel Gibson out, guys. When I want to tell you, what are they thinking that moment, So, yes, you're right. It's not, and they probably won't make a Braveheart, but kudos to Mel for making it. And
when they could. And you told me to ask you about the generational thing.
So, yes, I'm on the road as a stunt coordinator, second director with all of these apex stunt performers and stunt coordinators that work with me for the last. I've been on the road with the same guys for about 8 or 9 years. 8711, Stunts Unlimited, I hire within my team. Justin Yu, Troy Robinson, Mike Lair, they're my bros. But they are, except for Troy, those other guys and girls that are in my group are all millennials and Gen X and Gen Y, like parkour champions, world kung fu champion, car drifting champion, trick motorcycle champion. But they're all kids. And I love them, but I don't know what the fuck they're talking about half the time, dude. And we all love each other and laugh at each other, but it's that awkward thing that I experience on the road with my teammates that I love, and we spend time together and we hang out and watch MMA and go to the movies and do functions and stuff together and risk our lives together and make a bunch of dough together. But when I listen to them talk about things, I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about? That's exactly what I wanted to portray, that dynamic between Bud and Seth in my movie. Like, there's the generation that gets their knowledge from this.
Right.
They get their phone and it's Google. You and me, I'm 54 and we're probably your Gen X.
I'm not too far away from you, sir.
So, we were kids. If you wanted to learn something, you had to go there and learn it.
Oh, dude, you kidding me? Library, photocopy.
I joined the Army because I was a junior national Taekwondo champion, so I could go get stationed in Korea so I could fight the best in the world. So I committed 4 years of my life to the Army just for Taekwondo, just so I could go there and fight and train. So I know the way this gym smells at Chamshil. I know the way the gym smells in Thailand in Lumpini Stadium. I know the way that Budokan, the floor feels when you walk on it. Kids that learn on this, they don't know that. They're getting the knowledge without actually earning it, which comes without the wisdom of learning. No, not knocking my younger brothers and sisters, because I have a huge admiration for them and we can learn a lot from them as well. But that, for me, the practical application versus the quicker knowledge is another thing that I wanted to portray in my movie.
And if I can get up on my old man soapbox, the difference is that our generation I call us the bridge generation, because we were at a time when we understood pre-internet, pre-technology. I don't know about you, but I remember a time when there was no remotes.
That's right.
I was the remote for my grandfather. He's like, get up and change the channel. And you would go brr, 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 like that stuff. I showed my daughters the rotary phone the other day, and their minds just exploded. They just couldn't understand. And I go, yeah. And on the seventh number, if you mess it up, you got to start over. All these kind of things. But so we know that part of technology and history and society, but then we also were around when the internet was born.
That's right.
So we have feet in both
right.
generations, as opposed to like my daughters, they don't know anything different. That's right. And the millennials, they don't know a world without this kind of stuff. So it's a different way of looking at things.
The internet crashes, we would go back to the Thomas Guide in a hot minute, but they would maybe not know how to deal with that in coins for the phones. You remember? Like
of course.
I remember the pager when I was a kid. A pager went to church, and the pastor said, "Hey, you better get that. It might be God paging." He told him, "My grandma must be a doctor. He must be a doctor." Crazy, man.
Now, when is Day Shift coming out, man?
August 12th, it drops. We are, I'm super excited. Like all my other director friends said, dude, this is the worst time for you because you don't know. And I was like, Bubba, for me, not knowing is the bliss of not knowing. For me, it's awesome because I feel like I did everything I could to make it as good as I can. I had a great time doing it. I had a great partner in my cast, in my shooting crew, in my producers and Netflix. I'm just super stoked to get it out there and let the ship sail, and let's see how far it goes.
And the thing I also love about what you're doing, man, is like you just made your first feature, but you're still hustling out there as a second unit, and you're still working. You don't stop, man. I saw your IMDb, man. You're like, nah, man. You're not like I'm a director now. I only direct. No.
I'm working as a stuntman next week too. So this is how it goes for me, brother. Just so you know, like I learned all my lessons in life. I didn't go to college. I learned my lessons in life in the dojo and in the Army. And my master said something to me when I was 11 years old. He said, if you want to be a fighter, you have to go fight. Fighting is a perishable skill. Directing, in my opinion, for me, is a perishable skill. If you're not out there doing it all the time, you're not reactive or proactive. You become reactive. You got to be proactive. You got to be in front of the wave all the time. So I'm constant. Just got back from doing a movie for Warner Brothers called Blue Beetle. Did Murder Mystery 2 for Netflix. Getting ready to do Back in Action for Netflix. Like I want to keep myself directing action, and hopefully my movie does well, and they give this old cowboy another shot at the title, baby. I'm ready. Ring the bell.
Now, bro, I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all of my guests. What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today?
Believe in yourself and be as good as you can be. Be the best version of yourself, because when opportunity comes, you might not get another shot at it. It comes when it comes, and you can make your fate in certain ways, but you think, like for my example, it took me 32 years to get a directing job. So when my moment came, I was absolutely ready. I had a script that I loved and was passionate about. I knew what that set was going to smell like before I got there. And this is coming from a dyslexic, colorblind guy that never went to college, So if you get the opportunity, you have to make the most of that opportunity. And don't take anything for granted, and learn as much as you can about all the other departments.
What did you learn from your biggest failure?
Yeah, I've taken a bath a few times. It's tough love, especially when you get out of the Army. The Army prepares you for certain things, but it doesn't necessarily prepare you for what to do when you get out always, especially in the late 80s, early 90s. I got out in 1990. So it was hard for me because I didn't know many people. I didn't know anyone in LA except for one or two people. Like I slept on the floor of a karate school for a long time. It was very there was no room for error. Like if I didn't make money, I was definitely going to be back in the Army. So, but LA strangely was, a place at the time. And even now I love this place. It's a trip, but the weather and the place, I fell in love with it the first time I saw it, back in 1988 while I was driving to Fort Ord, when I drove through LA. So that's probably the biggest lessons came from, just learning how to apply the work ethic that I learned in the military and from martial arts, in how to monetize that and be able to survive in the real world.
And 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Oh, shit.
Whatever comes to mind, brother. Whatever. It won't be on your tombstone. Whatever comes to mind.
Okay, Police Story and Armor of God are tied is action greats. I have to mention Enter the Dragon, Armor of God and Police Story. So the Terminator and Rocky, the first Rocky and the first Terminator, because the first Terminator for me was the story was like I remember sitting in the theater I was in downtown Houston.
Yeah.
It's probably stoned with my buddies, and we were like, remember the first time when you saw Star Wars and when they went to hyperspeed? Remember that first?
Lost your mind. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So that was kind of Terminator for me, and Rocky was such an inspiration as well, you know. So I would say, it's hard for me to say three, but I would go Police Story, Armor of God, Rocky, Terminator, and any one of those three for me.
Any of those.
And you're like for entertainment, like it doesn't have action. Strangely, Forrest Gump was such a feel-good movie for me.
Such a good movie, man.
Awesome.
Now,
awesome.
One last question, man, because you mentioned Terminator. You've gotten a chance to work with Jim.
I have.
Dude,
I go to the gun range with him as well. I go to the gun range with him as well sometimes. He shoots at this place.
So what is it like walking on the set of a Jim Cameron movie for the first time, and you're like, dude, that's Terminator? Like you have to geek out. Do you geek out every once in a while? I mean, at this point, you've worked with so many, but that first time.
The first time I walked on the set, we did prep work on the first Avatar, and when I went in at lunch, they were using this new technology where it was real time. Genesis. Garrett Warren, my friend, was the stunt coordinator. Peter Jackson and Steven Spielberg were there with Jim. So it was like this triple geek out moment where so Garrett walked in front of them and I snapped a picture, they were eating and he didn't want to bother him, but he walked in front of them and stopped and I clicked a picture for him.
Check it out.
You know when James Cameron is coming to work, you can hear the helicopter landing. That's when he shows up for work. That's how he comes to work from his place. Comes in a helicopter. He's a G, man. Like for me, that generation of filmmakers,
there's nothing like it.
They had to make the movies in camera, and then went with the wave to technology. Even Ang Lee is another example that I've done a bunch with Ang Lee. He's another one that's, practical filmmaker that went all the way into technology. All of those guys are epic. And if we have seen any farther as filmmakers, it's because we stood on the shoulders of giants like those men.
Absolutely. No question. JJ, man, it has been an absolute pleasure and honor talking to you and geeking out with you, brother. It is. I hope somebody learns a little bit from our conversation here. And there's a lot of gems in this one, man. But congratulations on your success, on your career, on your new movie. And I hope they give you the keys again, brother. I really looking forward to see what else you do, man.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.